And then once that cut has been made, then I'll just insert each side of the supply line back into the filter. Next, I'm going to want to install my valve. For the most part, on most units, it's going to go right here in the center because you're generally going to have the same amount of airflow all the way around. But in an effort to make it as efficient as possible, I would try and put the paddle in between one of these two metal bars here, so the majority of the paddle is exposed to the air that's being blown up. Now, and I want to connect it to the valve itself. But if you have too much excess of your supply line and you want everything to be kind of nice and neat, then what you can do is you can just kind of measure out the excess that you have and kind of put it up to the valve where it's going to go in, mark that point with your fingers, and then we can just cut off that excess, whatever it may be for you. Then once that excess is cut off, we can insert it into this blue port where it also says in. And all we got to do is just push it in there, nice and tight like we did with the cartridge, and now just give it a tug and you can see it won't just pull out. All right, so now that we've got the main supply line hooked up, now we need to take our 3 misting tubes, and there are still 3 ports open on the valve itself. Each one of these misting tubes is going to get plugged into one of those corresponding ports, and then the rest of it will go down along the sides of the condenser. We want to get it to as close as we can to the middle of each one of those sections of the condenser on each side. There's 3 sides that these are going to go on. So in order to do that, before these are connected to the valve itself, you'll kind of want to dry fit them, and then once you figure out the length that you're going to need for each side, nozzles are pointing out away from the condenser. Some people might think they should be pointing towards the condenser so the water is going directly onto the coils, but what we really want to do is, now that we're going to install these brass misters into these ports, we actually want that mist being pushed away from the condenser, and as this is running, it's going to suck that cooler air in. The idea is not necessarily to put water on the coils themselves, it's to cool the air on the outside of the unit. Of course, there's still going to be some mist in it still, but the idea is getting that cooler air going over those coils to make this run much more efficiently to get rid of that heat. So these misters are super easy to install. You can see they're threaded here on the top, and so we're just going to put that into that port, and we're just going to twist that in clockwise until it gets nice and tight. And now we're going to do the same thing on the remaining 2 lines. All right, so now at this point we can now turn on the hose bib that we connected our main line to. I can reconnect power going out to my AC unit, and I can turn the thermostat on and watch to make sure that it works properly. All right, so as you can see, that paddle is lifting up because of the fan pushing up on it, and each one of the misters is now supplying water, which is cooling the air around the condenser. I don't know if you can see it or not, but that mist is coming out, but then it's being pulled back in. Our temperature reading to see if we get a lower temperature at our vents. All right, so the unit's been running for about 10 or 15 minutes now, and as you can see, we're getting about 10.4, 10.5 amps, whereas before on our initial reading, we were getting like 11.9 or 12, which is a reduction of about 1.5 amps, which actually can make a pretty big difference on an electrical bill as much as your AC unit runs. So I would call this test a success. All right, so now back inside here, checking the thermometer, and now we're getting a reading of 56.5, which I believe our initial reading was around 57.7. Oh, it just went up to 56.7, might be because I'm underneath of it, but it's hovering between that 56.7 and 56.5, which is at least 1 degree cooler than our initial reading. And with this cooling at a degree less than it was earlier, that means that the AC unit is not going to have to run as long. And the less that the AC unit has to run, you save a lot of money by that unit just not running at all. So the big factor is how much cooler can you get the air, which in this